Welcome to the Young CPA Success Show. If you're a young accounting professional, this podcast is your ultimate guide to navigating your early career. Join us as we share valuable insights, expert advice, and practical tips to help you kickstart your path to success and excel in the accounting industry. Let's embark on this exciting accounting journey together.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about Excel, because one of the things that I've sort of noticed in my career is that I think if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, like, what did college leave me the most unprepared for? It was the amount of Excel that I was going to need to use early in my career in public accounting. And I know it's changed a lot in 15 years, but it still kind of feels the same. First kind of question to kind of get our juices flowing on Excel a little bit. What did we get right about training people on Excel, and what did we get wrong?
That's interesting. So first of all, I've also heard from employers that the Excel skills coming out of college is not where it needs to be. In other words, college doesn't adequately prepare accountants and finance folks for the real world, for their jobs. So it's actually interesting because I do have several accounting professors at colleges who teach their accounting class. Mm-hmm. And they are like, I know I'm not the Excel person to teach these kids, but they need to know it. So they'll actually have them register for my classes so that they can better be prepared. And so the feedback we're getting from those students and from those professors are like, when they go to interview, they're locked because their Excel skills are so above other people who are interviewing. And then, a couple years into their job, they stand apart amongst their peers also because of their Excel skills. So in this profession, Excel skills are definitely a thing that they look for.
And not only is it a thing, I'll kind of pull the curtain back on how we do things at Summit Virtual CFO by Anders. We identified that a long time ago, that like having a great tech stack and a well-designed Excel template is, I would say, probably the most important thing that we do with our forecasting and stuff. And we actually hired a number of people, and we have a whole department in our division that is dedicated to just kind of helping us solve that gap of Excel. And I thought I was good. And then I met Jake and Steve and Colin and Max and Martin in our IT department. I was like, no, those guys are sorcerers. I'm just a guy messing around with some formulas. So it's definitely something that businesses notice and schools notice. And I'm glad that you're kind of using Excel University to fill the gap a little bit in terms of getting people prepared. You mentioned kind of a professor not knowing how to do it. That really mirrored my experience in college when I think it was a finance class where we had to do some Excel modeling. And I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm glad that you're kind of filling the gap. When you design these courses, what skills are you most honing in on in today's world? How are you using Excel today, and what are you teaching around?
Yeah, that's really good. So basically there's 6 courses, and I think of them as like one great big course, but it takes like 1 year per course. So it took me 6 years to build the content, right? Because I go pretty in depth. Some of the Excel training you'll see online is really surface level, but I take people very deep. So in any event, they're kind of 6 courses. And so I really, I basically looked at all the Excel things that helped me automate my monthly close. So all the actual useful, practical, relevant Excel features. And so I built this huge Excel workbook that was like, okay, I need to talk about all these things, but I can't talk about pivot tables till I talk about tables. Well, right. I can't talk about, so there's all these like prerequisites. So I actually laid out all the topics in what I think to be like the exact right order. And then so I teach them in those 6 courses. So it's everything from overall workbook design, thinking about automating recurring processes, to formulas, functions, pivot tables, conditional formatting, Power Query, like VBA macros, like that whole kind of gamut. And I release them in kind of the order that is like low-hanging automation fruit all the way to kind of, the more challenging things.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I thought I read from your bio that you got your start in Arthur Andersen's audit practice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So thinking about like it makes like the genesis of that really makes sense when I think about what we're trying to do in an audit, right? Like when you think about an audit work paper or any type of work paper, really, you're taking a set of data and then you're just organizing it in a way and you're testing it to see if it makes sense. You're either going to do a full test or a sample or whatever it happens to be, but it's all kind of the same genesis, right? I've got a bunch of data, a bunch of raw stuff that's just sitting here, and that data doesn't become information until I organize it in a manner that allows me to make a decision from it. So I can totally see the genesis of how that sort of started and where it ended up. What did you take from your audit career that is really leading you to where you are now?
Yeah, so here's the thing. So I came, I'm a CPA and I went through this traditional route of, university, Big Six or Big Four, and then on to industry. But I learned that accountants love the dilly method. Do it like last year, right?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Or, the Sally method, same as last year, whatever. There's tons of those acronyms. And so it's kind of like, at Andersen, it was like, how did we do this last year? I'm just going to use the same approach. And so for like certain things, that's a great recipe for success. But like with Excel, it definitely is not. Like if I inherit this workbook that my manager did, and maybe my manager's manager, right? Well, this is like a workbook that's been in place doing this thing for like 10 years. Well, there's been updates to Excel and there are better, more powerful, more automated ways to do things. And so it's like, I need to really be focused on how do I improve this workbook to get it done faster? Because it's kind of like we're time pressured, we're deadline prompted. And so when we get to a deadline, it's kind of like, I just need to get this done. How did I do it before? And we're not.
Yeah, and I don't want to break it.
Yeah, I don't want to break it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say like, how do I get this done? It's just like, I just need to get it done. And so I just think that that's very interesting because if you actually take the time to improve the workbooks, that's when things are going to change. And so you're not going to spend 2 weeks doing a monthly close. You can get it down to 2 days, those kinds of efficiencies.
Well, and I love that idea too of the Dilly method or the Sally method, whatever acronym you want to use. There's an inherent assumption in that method that the person who did it before you did it right.
Yes.
And it's like, did we even think about whether that was the right way to do it or not? I mean, if you don't know what to do and you're a young staff person and you're not literate in Excel, yeah, you're going to default to, well, this person structurally in this organization, I've been told this is a person I can trust. They have moved up. Clearly they're good. I'm just going to follow the path that they've laid. And yes, good. But in our memorial, Adam Hale, who's our COO, his famous saying, yes, but we should test it to make sure that that's correct. Or to your point, that there hasn't been an update or something that has happened over the years to make things better.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And, like when I was the accounting manager at one role, so responsible for the monthly close. So it's all the journal entries, it's all the reports, the financials, like all that stuff. And so the workbooks that I inherited were done by my manager, right? And so I don't know, it was taking 2 weeks to get the monthly close done. And I was super stressed because I was just overwhelmed and all this stuff, working late nights, working weekends, like all of that whole scene. And then I'm just like, actually my CFO came to me one of these monthly closes where I was stressed out, cranky, grouchy, grumpy, that whole scene. And he's like, hey, Jeff, can you do this new report? And like at that moment, like I was just like, no, can you find someone else? Yeah. First of all, that's like not the right answer. And second of all, I did do the report and it was great. But that was kind of a, catalyst for me. Like, Jeff, what am I doing? Man, I'm cranky when I'm at work. I'm missing family events. I'm staying late. I'm coming in on the weekends. Like, what is going on? And so that was kind of the catalyst that I used to really drive home. How do I get these workbooks to do themselves? Like, how do I get Excel to do all the things I was doing manually?
Yeah. Well, and I love Excel because when you think about business, right? Like Excel's been around for what, 25, 30 years? Like I can remember some initial things from the 90s and those 90s versions of Windows. That's an eternity in the software game. What do you think it is about Excel that's allowed it to have the staying power? Because, I would imagine with all of the stuff that's happened over the last 30 years in technology, somehow Excel stays the king. And everyone's gunning for the king, but Excel stays the king. What do you think it is about them that allows them to stay so relevant?
I know you're right about that. Everyone is gunning for them, but I feel like they have probably 1 billion workbooks. I don't even know what the count is, and billions of lines of VBA code that are just in all these organizations. And it's kind of like it's the Swiss Army knife of tools. So some tools allow you to do like certain things, whereas Excel, you can do it by you can use it for like practically anything. And so I think that since it's been so engineered for so many different disciplines, and there's engineering, there's science, there's accounting, finance, all these and everything exports to Excel. So it's kind of like that's the lowest common denominator. And what's interesting is Microsoft is continuing to innovate in the Excel space and invest resources into Excel. So like there's always new things coming out. And in the old licensing model where we'd get a new version every 3 years, we wouldn't see those changes till every third year. And now it's coming out like monthly. So there's just always these new capabilities and updates. And I'm a Microsoft Excel MVP. So if you're not familiar with that program, there's 1,000 or so MVPs selected in the different product lines. And so anyways, we get to go to this MVP summit every year and learn about all the new things that are coming out. And so I can just tell you, like, they are still innovating in this product, and things like Power Query, they're game changers. Power Pivot is a game changer. So it's fun to see all these new features come out. And I think that's why they're still the king.
Well, and they're thinking about things so holistically too, like the package of the Office suite makes so much sense because it all works really well together. And I'll be the first to say your point about it can be used for anything hit really close to home. And I'm going to tell a little story here about how I used Excel in a non-accounting way. A couple of years ago, my wife came to me, and this was during COVID, right? So honestly, probably 4 years ago to the day around when she said, this is when we want to do this. We had a space in our house that didn't really fit, right? It was like a little counter with some cabinets in there. And it was like, okay, I mean, this is fine, but is this the best and highest use of the space? And we looked around and we're like, no, we really want bookshelves in here. So my wife was like, okay, you need to design the bookshelves. And I'm like, well, I'm an accountant, so let me tell you how I'm going to design the bookshelves. So I went into Excel and I put in Excel, I created, I measured the space and I set one of the little, rows of Excel and the columns to the right length to say, this is going to represent one unit of what this is. And I designed out the bookshelf in Excel, and it was drawn to scale. And I knew exactly how many Billy bookcases I needed to buy from IKEA to go in there, and exactly what the width of the boards that I needed to be to put them in there, and where to do it. And it was such a versatile tool because I could scale it up or down for what I needed. And it works very well with linear things, doesn't work great with curves, but I'm an accountant, so I like straight lines. So it worked really, really well for that. And I know I'm not the only person who does that.
Oh, for sure. I love that story too, because it's okay to use Excel for non-business things, right?
I felt so accomplished. I was like, look, I was creative. I did some creative stuff in Excel today.
Yeah, well, I laid out our garage. We were also planning some shelving, so I just took the dimensions, put it all in the equal units. So that was like a couple of months ago. So I totally get where you're at there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the perfect tool for that. And it's, again, if you think about things linearly like I do, it's great. Once you start trying to put in some, nice, lovely architecture curves, it starts to not work. But you could also just say, hey, this is where the pretty part's going to go. It's just going to go in this little square right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Go at it. Have fun.
And by the way, did you put your half marathon training plan in Excel?
Not only have we put the half marathon training plan in Excel, my wife will do book planning in Excel. I plan all of my vacations in Excel. I plan we used to have food recipe lists and things that we would plan in there. We'd plan out our week's food in Excel. Everything.
Awesome.
That we do.
Hey, how is your training going, by the way?
So we ran the first one.
Oh, you got it done.
We got it done.
Awesome.
It was not great. It was okay. We ran the Tucson half marathon with one of my coworkers. She absolutely toasted us. She rocked it, but it was also her home course. So I'm going to say she had the advantage. I I finished ahead of time. I had a little thing go on with my knee where, it was kind of an overuse thing that I kind of had to just sort of manage throughout it. So I was kind of did the Galloway method. For those not familiar with running, the Galloway method is you kind of walk for a small unit and you run for whatever type of unit you want. So I did like a 1 walk to 3 run, kind of managing that on the way in because it didn't hurt when I walk, only when I ran. So, but it was great. I've got the medal somewhere in this office, but no, it was wonderful. And I can't wait to do the next one.
Good for you. And I wasn't sure in listening to your prior shows, was that your first half?
That was my first half. It was my wife's second. So she ran and she beat me by about 8 minutes, which I think I was happy it was 8 minutes. She would have preferred it to be 12 or 14 or 16 because, again, we like to get a little competitive in here. But yeah, that was the first half that I've run. I think I'm good. I don't think I need to do a marathon. I think I'm good with just the half, and then maybe get back into some triathlon type stuff and do some different things. But it was a really cool experience. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, my wife and I are the same way. She's faster than me. She's been running a lot longer. She's done like 50. I've only done like 11. So
I was going to ask if you do what are some of the things you're looking for when you're kind of like, ooh, I want to do my next half.
Oh, so kind of I use them as a way to keep on training. If I don't have this race coming up, it's easy just to go, well, I don't know, maybe I'll do something else today instead of run,
Right. Yeah, you got to have that structure.
Yes. And so when I have that out in front of me, then I know I kind of keep on the plan, the Excel spreadsheet, the plan. It's like, well, it's on the plan, so I have to run today, even if I don't feel like it. So that's been helpful. But yeah.
What's one, and this is something that we talk about a lot on the show. I didn't become a runner until later in life. And when I was starting in my career, like I was super unhealthy, didn't eat well, didn't exercise well. And I know that's a really common theme. Like I love to tell the joke. I didn't gain any weight in college. Like I didn't have the freshman 15, didn't have the junior 30. I stayed relatively, lean and in shape in college. And then the second I got into working, I realized that in Manhattan, Kansas, the local Pizza Hut had a stuffed crust Tuesday buffet. All you can eat stuffed crust pizza on Tuesdays. And that was when the first year 45 kicked in, and it took a really concerted effort to manage the nutrition and those types of things, but also carve that time out into my day to get the exercise in, get the movement. And it doesn't always have to be running a 10K or a 20K. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm going to go move my body today for 45 minutes. It can be whatever I want it to be. What are some tips that you have brought into your life that allows you to have that structure to get that training in? Because I think that's super important.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it is having that next race and then just kind of forcing myself to stick to it. But recently what I've tried to do, because here's what I notice. I notice if I wait to the end of the day to do the run, it's easier to blow it off than if I just set my running clothes out the night before.
Yep.
And then wake up and my clothes are right there. So I put them on and I just try to get like 3 miles done, maybe even 2 miles done in the morning before I head out. And then not only do I get the run done, but it's also like I feel like I have way more energy throughout the whole day.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. There's 2 keys for me. It's like I've got to have a good breakfast. I've got to fuel well. And then if I do that and I hit my exercise block, I think we usually try to do it in the wintertime, usually around 10 or 11 in the morning here, because we get kind of cold in the mornings in the wintertime, and then it warms up to the 40s or 50s, which is great for running. In the summers, it's like you got to get out there by 7 a.m. But if I'm right there with you. If I don't get it done in the morning, I just drag all day. And if I'm like the worst case thing is I'll just do it this afternoon. Never happens. 1 out of 10 times does it actually happen in the afternoon.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I think about just sort of there's a lot that I feel like I bring from running and training and exercise to the career, whether it's, we do the same type of thing when we talk with CFOs here in our business about creating that structure. One of the things that's hugely key for us when working on client engagements is similar to what you do with your plan. You've got to sketch out your week. You've got to put these little blocks of time in there and get that we call it the meeting cadence, get the meeting cadence set, get the meeting cadence scheduled, and then follow it. So I think that's a really good life lesson for anyone who either A, wants to be a runner, or B, just, wants to kind of start thinking about how to be more successful in their career, because that's a huge key for us.
Yeah. And I think those same habits carry forward into the workplace, also that discipline and setting a plan, following the plan, setting a goal, actually doing the hard work, the grind that it takes to get to that goal. Those are all great life and career lessons for sure.
Well, and the other thing too that I loved about your thought there, because I do the same thing with those races, you kind of keep it up. The value in the race is not the race itself. The value really comes from the preparation and the building of the habits and building of those types of things. Like, I've noticed that over the last couple of years, as we've gotten more regimented with our running, like, my numbers are better. We track all of our blood work and everything throughout the years. And it's like, okay, keeping that baseline level higher has led to lower blood pressure for me. My wife's blood pressure is incredible. She's much better at it than I am, but like lower blood pressure, our cholesterol numbers are where they need to be. Our heart is super healthy. Like those types of things, that is the true value of it, not just running the race and getting the medal.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like almost the race is just an easy celebration of the training plan.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. We're just celebrating at this point.
Yeah, I've only done one full, and like you, I'm good with that. I don't need any more fulls, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole other, 13 miles is very nice. 26 is like a little much, but in any event, I was diligently following the training plan. I go to the Marine Corps full, I do the race, and I'm like, this is easy. What have I been so terrified about? Like, this is actually, and so it was just a super fun race. You're running around seeing all the different Washington, D.C. monuments. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like, I'm good, but I'm glad I did it once.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because when we love to watch the New York City Marathon. We watch the Chicago one when they show it. Obviously, we watched Boston. That's a big one for accountants because it's always on April 15th. So we'll look, or usually it's on April 15th. So we'll usually watch that. And the thing that I see the most from everybody there is everybody is smiling when you watch them on camera. Everybody looks like they're having so much joy. And I'm sure deep down, they're probably all a little bit miserable in certain cases, especially as you get to the end. You get to like 20, 21, 22, from what I've heard, it starts to, that's when the mental wall starts to hit in of like, oh, I've still got a 10K left and I'm at 20 miles. That's a lot. But even with that is the overwhelming sense that I feel when I watch that. It's just this sense of joy.
Yeah. And I think for that race too, Boston, like my wife did that, and the community support is so insane because everyone's out there cheering you on. So, what a great event.
Let's tie that back into, to accounting and Excel and these types of things. And when I think about, as I've moved up in the organizations, I've moved up in my career, I like this idea of passing down these skills, kind of like the audience or the people viewing that race are passing along their joy and using it to fuel their runners and fuel those people there. That to me is the hallmark of a great leader. If I'm empowering you with the skills and I'm empowering you with the motivation and the drive and the desire to go out there and take my workbook and make it better, that's what I'm ultimately trying to do. I want to make sure we spend some time talking about Excel University, which is, looking at the notes here, you launched it in 2012. So it's 12 years old at this point. You mentioned about the first 6 is what it took for you to build it out. So you've had kind of half of its life was in the building stage. Half of it's been in the implementation and improvement phase. How's that been going over the last really 12 years, but specifically once you got it built and now you're kind of improving on it?
Yeah, so basically the first 6 years, one course a year. Okay, so I got those done. And now like my time is really spent more on, like you said, improving it, but also developing tons of free content. So in other words, most 80% of my time now is just spent building free content, whether that's YouTube videos, blog posts, newsletter, By the way, if anyone wants to get onto the newsletter, I send out one a week with a video tutorial, exceluniversity.com/tips. There's a hyphen in there, so it's exel-university.com/tips. And there's a newsletter in there. Anyway, so then I spent time doing that. And then I've really spent time on automating the business. So just like I spent time automating my Excel workbooks, getting that monthly close from 2 weeks to 2 days, and Excel was the main platform I used to automate that. Now in my business, there's other tools that I use to automate that. So I've pretty well replicated that for my business. So now it's like getting prospective students is automated. Nurturing them to give them Excel tips and to show them Excel is a big place and to show them I can help them and be their guide. That's all automated. In terms of setting up webinars, that's automated. The quizzes is automated. Getting the certificate of completion CPE credit is automated. So that's where I've been spending the majority of the time, is just getting all that stuff like totally dialed in.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned CPE too, because that's one of the, obviously a big thing for CPAs is getting their CPE credits. And one of the things I've learned and noticed in my CPA career, like once I got the licensing and had to do the CPE, when I looked at what I was doing every day, I didn't really need to stay up on audit procedures. Like, I know yellow book audits are a thing. I couldn't tell you what a yellow book audit is. No clue. Right over my head. It's never been something that I've had to worry about. No, it's a thing. Couldn't tell you. The type of relevant CPE for me is, how do I build my skills? How do I build the toolbox that I can use to do things? And that's why I love hearing you say that these courses can be taken for CPE credit. That to me is incredibly valuable for us, because it's practical use cases that you can do. It's not just sitting there. And I love my boy Peter Olento from Becker, but at some point, like, Peter Olento's taught me everything he's going to teach me. You know, a debit is a debit and a credit's a credit. I need to understand how to implement it and use it. So I love that those are interactive courses that you can take and get some CPE credit for.
Yeah, and let me talk about that for a second, because I grew up with, I'm a little old school, but like when I was getting CPE credit, it was like you go to an 8-hour live class and they're teaching you skills that you can use. But I've seen it evolve to almost like, let's just have this webinar off on another screen. Let me click the attendance checks, and I'm just doing it for compliance. I'm not doing it to like build my skills. So I feel so good about my classes because they do give you practical skills and help you, improve your career, like CPE was originally intended to be.
Yeah, it's funny. Back when I was getting started, we had a group within our firm that like did the 8-hour live CPE shows. Like, they'd go around the country and do I think they usually did like 2 or 3 day webinars. So you can get like 16 of your 40 hours in 2 days. And their thing was like, hey, we come to you. You don't have to come to us, which is my mom's told me all the times when she's like, yeah, I had to fly out to San Diego for a week and spend all the week in a conference. And that was my CPE for the year.
Yes.
So I love the on-demand nature of it now, but to your point, you're going to get out of that what you put into it. If you're just sitting there saying, yep, I clicked the attendance button, I answered the Becker quizzes, I did those things, but I was just doing it because I had to. I didn't do it because it's something that I wanted to do or something that I thought I was going to need to use. Yeah, you're not going to get anything out of it. But to your point, if you can make it something that you're going to use and learn from and grow from and start implementing in your practice, that's how CPE was meant to be.
Yeah. And so the way I structure my courses is they're really a blend of sort of the technology piece and the live, what I learned in live sessions. So I gave hundreds of live 8-hour classes all over the country. So it's like on-demand videos that you would stream at your own schedule pace. Then there's the practice exercises, so you can actually like practice the skills in the safe workbook for the things that we talk about. Then there's the quizzes, the exam, 70% unlocks the certificate of completion. Some of my classes also include live office hours, so that these are Zoom calls. So you're like, hey, I'm stuck on this exercise, or even like, I have this Excel question, or even like, let me share my project workbook. And so I'll help them with that. So it's kind of a nice blend of the on-demand, what the technology can do, plus kind of the live support. So it's a really effective format, I think.
Well, and that live support is so key too, because it's one thing, it's great to have someone that you can talk to and get some real life feedback on like, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. That's how we use our tech team internally is, if I go to them and say, hey, I need this, they're like, yeah, I can maybe do that, and it's going to be decently effective. But if I can go to them and say, hey, here's all the data, here's where we're getting it from, here's how I want it to look, help me automate these pieces and move it in there and make this, so that we've got to click an easy button and go. They're able to do that very, very effectively because we're having that back and forth communication of like, okay, what's this feature that you want? What's that feature that you want? So it's really nice to be able to have someone to talk to about that, because it helps me get better too as someone who's even thinking about automation. Automation does not come naturally to me. I am a brute force person. I have always solved everything through hard work. And more hours, which is not smart. That's not what I should be doing. I should be thinking about how do I get to the outcome with the least number of steps possible. That's the best way to think about it. So I like that you're providing a great resource for kids there. It's great. And not just kids, anybody can take the class.
Yeah, oh, for sure. My main audience is CPAs who need CPE credit. I also do have, the college, students enrolled, but mostly it's going to be your accountants, finance, sitting in cubes, cranking out Excel, spending, more than like once a month in Excel, like you're using it on a periodic basis. Yeah. But the other cool thing about the office hours is that even if you don't necessarily have a question, you join the office hours and you're seeing how other people are using Excel, other students, and you're like, oh, I never thought of that. And so it's very motivating and very like you can kind of learn how to apply Excel. So it's pretty fun.
No, and I love that because that's the number one way that I've described our model is we throw all of our ideas in the middle and the best idea wins. That's what you want in an organization. So I like that that's a great point because you might be trying to do the same thing as someone else. And they're like, oh, I figured out a different way to think about it. And the light bulb goes off.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Well, one thing that I kind of wanted to end with here, and this is something we're always thinking about as a forward-looking, future-focused firm. We talked a little bit earlier about how Excel has stayed the king for a long time, but we've had more transformation in the technology space and applications of AI and other types of things that are happening in the accounting industry. How do you see Excel changing in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever like the short to medium term is in the technology world? Short term might be 10 years for me, but maybe in technology, that's like 2 years, right? How do you see Excel changing over the next couple of years or whatever the short medium term is to respond to the changes that we're seeing in the world with AI and other types of intelligent business tools that are kind of rolling out every day?
Yeah. So I see Microsoft as really focused on helping the user accomplish more. In other words, they know it's a big place. They know it's intimidating. They know it's scary. And things aren't surfaced or things aren't like readily available unless you kind of know where to look. Mm-hmm. So they're always trying to make it easier to use so that you can leverage it and get more power out of it. So they're really focused on that. So at the last, over the last couple of years, it's all about integrating AI. So with their Copilot product, how are they able to help you use Excel while you're in it? How do they use it to do some commanding or taking some actions on your behalf? And how do they help you write code and things like that? How do you understand formulas that are in there? So I inherited this workbook from my manager's manager, and there's this formula with like 20 nested functions. Like, what is this? Whereas, hey, this is what this function does. So I think those are kind of be the changes that you're going to see, helping individual users leverage it and get more out of it.
I like that you mentioned Copilot because as of this recording, that's been out. I've noticed it over the last 2 to 3 weeks specifically. I think I remember seeing the first ad for it in the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, was I think the first time I remember seeing, oh yeah, this is a thing that Microsoft is doing. Is that, I would imagine, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first iteration of their kind of AI tool that's meant to be native to their applications. Am I thinking about that correctly? Yeah,
so think about it like ChatGPT, right? Mm-hmm. But then it's customized for your data. So it's not like I'm asking a generic question. I'm asking a question about this workbook that I'm in, or about this PowerPoint that I'm in, or about this Word document that I'm in. And so it's understanding this document, the context, depending on where you store your files, it's understanding the data in your whole OneDrive type of thing. And so it's able to kind of access all of that custom data rather than just generic like LLM trained data.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to be a huge thing, and I've been kind of playing around with it a little bit. And obviously, firms use different sources for things. In fact, Summit, before we merged, we were like a Google house. That was kind of our thing, and Anders was more of a Microsoft house. So we had to have a little bit of a change there as we moved from Google to Microsoft. I was always more comfortable with Microsoft, so I was not as upset with the move to Edge from Chrome or those types of things, but that's going to be something I'm very interested to see how we play with over the next couple of years is, how do we start kind of synthesizing this tool into our workflows and into our thought process? Because again, if it's not native to you, you're not going to think about it. If that's not a muscle or a lever that you're used to engaging, you're not going to do it. So I think we have to kind of retrain ourselves a little bit to know that these tools are there and how to get them there. So
yeah,
I'm very excited for the future.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because as vendors start to integrate this new technology, then we get the benefit of it.
Well, one of the things we like to do, we've talked a lot of business and a lot of learning and use cases, but we did spend a good amount of time in the middle talking about running. And I think running is great because we always want to talk to our guests and bring the humanity out of the podcast because we bring our whole selves to work every day. So first question, and it'll lead into the second question. Do you listen to music when you run and train? Are you a music person, or are you kind of earbuds out? I want to hear nature.
That's a really interesting. I would say mostly it's music or podcasts, and then sometimes it'll just be open. How about you?
I tend to listen to music, except when I'm running on the beach. When I'm running on the beach, I want to hear the waves, and that happens like once every 2 years. So it's not often, but usually I've got some sort of 2000s to 2010s hip hop EDM type stuff to get me a little bit pumped up. And that's where the second part of the question was going to go is, what's your go-to running playlist?
Oh, my running playlist. I listen to like some Skillet.
Oh, yes.
Maybe
high RPM.
Yeah, exactly. It happens to match with my cadence, so it's
Yep.
If I'm mountain biking, it's more of like Skrillex, kind of that kind of a thing. So it kind of depends on the activity. But then if it's a long run, my main goal is to just occupy my mind. So that's a podcast or Audible book.
Yeah.
If it's a short 2-3 miler, music is fine. But yeah, if I'm trying to just crank out the miles, I just find if I can get my mind somewhere else, then it's very helpful.
I've found, and I've mentioned this to folks, I've probably mentioned it on here before, I do most of my good thinking when I'm running.
Yes.
Sometimes like when you're in the grind of the day to day, like you're moving from meeting to meeting to meeting, like you're trying to minimize your content switching, you're doing all those things. I never find that I have enough time to synthesize. And that's when I do my most thinking. And sometimes my wife is like, why do you look like you're talking to yourself when you're running? I'm like, well, it's because I am. Like I am forming my thoughts about what I want to talk about on the show or what I want to do with my next client and how I want to present certain things. So I love that idea of like engaging your brain and keeping it occupied. And the running is just sort of what you're doing in the background to catalyze those different functions of your life.
Yeah, 100. And it's like I listen to that same music so that I can think while it's playing.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I've come up with great business ideas and things like that on these runs. And you're right. It's like this quiet time that you normally don't carve out during the day because you're just inundated with all these things. But that's like this quiet time where you really can think about things in a different way. So I totally agree with that.
Is there, and one final question here, I know we're getting pretty close to time and want to make sure we're wrapping up and kind of closing the loop on some of the things here. What's your go-to podcast? Is there one that, really engages your brain? Is there one that we're not listening to that we should be listening to?
Yeah. So I recently discovered the All In podcast. And so that's my new go-to favorite. Before that, it was a lot of Jordan Harbinger interviews. But now, it's the All In podcast is my go-to.
Okay. Who's the host of that? That's not one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, there's like several different guys, and so these are guys who like are old tech like bros, Elon Musk era guys. So they are so smart, and they comment on everything from tech to mergers to politics. Like, I don't know, they're incredibly smart, and so you just see things from different perspectives than I would think about things. So definitely highly recommended.
Oh yeah, and I would imagine that's probably a very future forward or future thinking podcast if they're synthesizing all these things that are happening and saying here's what I see coming from this. Here's my opinion.
Yes,
I like that a lot. I'm gonna have to add that to my list.
Definitely.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today. A couple of just quick housekeeping items. I want to make sure we've got all the different places where we can find not only you and your content, but where to go to Excel University and those types of things if anybody is interested in finding out more about the courses.
Yeah, probably the best place is exceluniversity.com/tips, excel-university.com/tips tips. That's where you can opt into the newsletter. Plus, there's a free 2 CPE course. So if you're a CPA, the free course qualifies you for 2 credits. You get into our LMS, and that course focuses on like the big time savings things. So like in Excel, there's all kinds of things. Some save a little bit of time, some save big time. That Excel Secrets course that's free is really talking about the major things that have the biggest opportunity to save you the most amount of time. So it's a pretty good little course.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been a blast. I can't wait to see what comes from you in the future, but also where Excel takes us and how we're going to be transforming our lives in the next 2 to 3 years as the world changes around us. So, Jeff, thank you so much for spending 40 minutes with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
If you're a young CPA looking to develop in their careers, we're always looking for great people. Visit our website for remote work opportunities with Summit Virtual CFO, or find all our open positions at Anders CPAs and Advisors.